it makes my life so much easier too. I can eat the same dinner as my family, where before I was, depending on what diet I was on, either making myself a totally separate dinner or just eating the meat and then like making a separate salad that I could add on. So, besides all the tracking, the extra meal preparation I would have to do for myself, I'm being a better role model for them, a positive role model, and truly showing them how to trust themselves and their bodies, and that their body can tell them what to eat.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I was just thinking, I'm like, man, what kind of message is that sending your family if you're always having a different meal than what your family's having? Like, how do you justify that without putting dieting behaviors onto your children?
Right.
It would be really tricky.
Hey, it's Nichole Kellerman-Worth, CEO of WildlyAlive.com, where we help women get on the same team as their bodies so they can feel and look their best. When a woman realizes how badass her body is, she feels alive and is no longer afraid to create the life she's always wanted. I know this to be true because it's happened to me and thousands of our clients. Welcome to the journey of getting on the same team as your body.
Hello, sisters. Okay, so today in our episode, we are bringing on a Wildly Alive mentor. This is Becky, and the reason why I felt like Becky was so great for this particular podcast is that when she first jumped into Wildly Alive, or prior to Wildly Alive, she was like counting her macros, and she had done a lot of different food strategy type things before she jumped into some of the Wildly Alive philosophies. And she's really grabbed a hold of them and created a relationship with food that is freedom, that is one of freedom and really centered in her body. And so I thought she was a really perfect mentor to come on. She'll share with you her experience prior and all of the restrictions and obsession and time that she spent figuring out what she should and shouldn't eat and things like that. And then what her relationship with food looks like now. Because when Becky first jumped into Wildly Alive, like when somebody comes into Wildly Alive and they tell me that they were just like counting their macros, I take a little bit of a deep breath, because I'm like, okay, we're going to have to do a lot of rewiring, like some unwiring of the, thought processes around food and rewiring. But the thing about Becky is that even though she had a really strong dieting history, she took on these concepts and had no resistance and was just like, yeah, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see how it goes. And because she had no resistance, it was amazing watching her in the year of mastery. And then, as mastery started wrapping up, she was really interested in becoming a mentor. And I was like, of course, like your transformation was so big. So many women could, benefit from your leadership. Of course, I would love to have you to jump into the mentorship as well. But it just goes to show that when when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And it doesn't really matter how deep her history with food and dieting was, she was ready for these concepts. And so, I always say with Wildly Alive, and most graduates will tell you this, like when I do testimonial videos, I ask at the end of the video of like, if you know somebody who's on the fence, what would you say to them? And a lot of them say, you do have to be ready for this work because it is different. And it does involve a level of self-respect and self-inquiry that most programs, you don't really need. It just requires willpower. And so Becky was really like in this place of, okay, I've done all these things, and even though these concepts may feel very different from anything that I'd done before, she had no resistance and she opened herself up to it, and her transformation was great from them. I'm like, wow, you're just such a shining example of what happens when people just let go of that. Well, how does this work? Well, really, is it really going to work this way? Like, I don't really think this is like, really? Wait, I need, like having, if you have a lot of resistance towards some of these concepts or a lot of skepticism, then it's a little harder to really, really apply them. It's okay to be a little skeptical, for sure. But when you push up against them, it makes the transformation a little bit slower. And it's more about looking at the resistance than the actual thing that we're talking about. And so Becky was really free of the resistance, despite the fact that everything that she had tried before. And maybe actually, and Becky, you can maybe speak to this, maybe it was because of your very strong history with dieting that actually made you resistance free. So yeah, okay, Becky's here. Hello, Becky.
Hello.
So excited to have you. Let's just jump right in. Do you think that maybe that had something to do with your lack of resistance?
Yes. First of all, thanks for having me on. This is my first podcast ever.
Yay.
But yes, definitely my history played a role in me dropping the resistance to try a Wildly Alive. My background, I have been a yo-yo dieter for years, tried every diet under the sun. I was a health and fitness coach for a very well-known company for a few years. And I tried it all. So my background when it came to my nutrition was very diety, very controlling. And right before Wildly Alive, I was counting my macros, entering all of them into my food calculator, weighing my food like by the gram. And I was alternating high and low carb days. And when I discovered Wildly Alive, I was at the point where I was miserable tracking. It was such a chore. If I was still hungry after dinner, I wouldn't even eat more because I would have to weigh the food, enter it in my calculator, and it was just too much work. Or sometimes I would swing in the total opposite direction and just totally binge on food and not track it at all because I was so restricting. So when the concepts of body-led eating were introduced to me through Wildly Alive, I was so ready to drop it. I was so ready to drop the rules and the macro counting because I was miserable doing that.
Yeah. So, okay, that's a really good point because I have kind of said, and this isn't for every single woman, but sometimes with women, and I think this is what happened to me as well. Sometimes there has to be a level of suffering, and this sounds really bad, but I do believe it. Sometimes there has to be a level of suffering for you to really be open to something totally different. And again, this isn't for every single woman that has come into Wildly Alive, but I know that that's what happened to me, this exact thing, where I was just like, I am so tired. I am so exhausted from all of the mind, like the strategy of like what I should eat and what I shouldn't eat. And I remember saying like losing weight was the hardest thing I had ever done, ever. Like I was like, that was literally the hardest thing. It took me years to lose weight. I was like, that's the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. It doesn't need to be that hard. It's just, it required so much freaking willpower. And it was when I had kind of suffered so much that I was like, I started looking for something better. I'm like, is there something better out there? Like, there's gotta be something else. Like, it should not be this hard. It should not be this exhausting. And also, I don't want to be. I remember I met a woman at a Weight Watchers meeting who had been counting points for like 30 years. And I remember just being like, come hell or high water, I do not want to be going to Weight Watchers meetings when I'm in my 50s. Like, there is no way. Like, there has got to be, like, please send me. Like, there's got to be a different way. And so it seems like, okay, so I'm like kind of like talking against my whole point, but like, I guess you could have a history of dieting and have a lot of resistance, or you could have a big history of dieting and be at this point where you're totally fed up and you're like, it does not have to be this hard. Like, there has got to be something easier out there. And that just seems like exactly where you are, where you're just like, I was just ready for something different.
Yeah, totally. And I kept thinking that there's people out there that are naturally healthy, they tune into their body and they just know what to eat. And it's so easy for them. And I want to be that. I want it to be easy like that.
You know what's interesting, you bringing that up, is that for a long time when I was in my disordered eating and exercising, I truly believed that anybody who was thin had an eating disorder. Like, I really believe that. I was just like, oh yeah, she starves herself. Yeah, she definitely starves herself. Oh yeah, she just works out all the time. Like, I was so lost in my own disordered eating and exercising that I thought that the only way to be thin and fit is by some sort of, and I didn't think this at the time as disordered eating, but I'm like, she's got to be hungry, like she's got to be hungry if she's that thin, or she's got to be at the gym all the time. I was just so like brainwashed to believe that the only way that you could look that way is if you were in extreme strategy with food and your body, or food and exercise. But yeah, it's like there are people, and I didn't have a lot of actual examples in my life, but there are people who are naturally healthy because they eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're full and they go for walks and, move their body. But it's like not a drama. And for me, it was all drama. I mean, food was like the most dramatic part of my life. It was all my focus.
Like,
right.
My whole focus of my day before Wildly Alive was planning my meals. I'd even the night before enter my food for the next day in my macro calculator to make it easier and have it all preloaded. And I was always thinking about, okay, when's my next snack? When's my next meal? What am I going to eat? It consumed so much time as well.
Right. So, okay. So when you were introduced to Wildly Alive, like what was that process for you? Do you remember?
Yeah. At first it was freeing, have the rules lifted. And then, so then I would just tune in with my body with a lot of the concepts that were taught to me by you and say, okay, what do you want to eat? So then I remember I got to this point and we were doing the one-on-one coaching together. So I got to this point where I wanted a Pop-Tart every day. And that's because of my super restricting rules I put on myself. I wouldn't even buy them. They weren't allowed in the house because I would eat them all. And so you told me, well, just tune in with your body. Is that what she really wants? And if that's what she really wants, eat one. And I was like, really? It's that simple? Okay. So this was probably for about a month. I tuned in with my body. Okay. Am I really hungry? Am I feeling anything else? No. Okay. Do I want this Pop-Tart? Yes. And so I probably had a Pop-Tart every day for around a month. And then all of a sudden the day came where I was like, no, I don't want that Pop-Tart anymore. I'm over it. And I can't even tell you the last time I had a Pop-Tart. But it's because I had put that rule on myself for so long. I feel like I became like a rebellious teenager once the rules were lifted. And so as long as my body wanted that, I let her have that. I didn't binge. And then it kind of, the want for that went away.
Yeah. So Becky brings up a really good point that I think we really need to emphasize on. So when you have, because sometimes, okay, so women have this belief that if they're, and this was my belief too, if I don't have, I was so anxious around not having a plan. There was no trust in myself because this is the dieting world. And again, this can sound really conspiracy theory, but it's true because it works, is that if the dieting industry can disempower you enough and make you understand that getting healthy is just about math, that's all it is. It's a simple equation. It's simple math, has nothing to do with you or your body. It's just a simple math equation. And I have, this plan that will just, and so you just need the plan. That's all you need. You just need the plan. And so it creates this like codependent relationship between you and the plans is like, you need the plans to be healthy because you can't figure it out on your own. You can't trust your body. If you're hungry, don't eat. I mean, are you, like Becky and I were talking about this before, where, what did you say? Something about the cow, you just finished your plate because you allotted yourself those calories, even though maybe you were full.
When I was on a diet, like even if I felt full halfway through my meal, I would still finish that meal because I was only allowed so many calories or macros, whatever per day. And I didn't want to feel hungry later. So I would just eat, finish it.
Right. So like, it doesn't have anything to do with your body. Your body has nothing to do with this, which again, like, this is so silly. This is so silly when we really take a breath into our wisdom, into our wildly alive wisdom woman, wise woman, is we're talking about food. We're talking about eating food for our bodies. Why is our body not a part of the equation? It's just simple math. That's all it is. Like, it's silly. It's like, of course, the body is a part of this conversation. Of course, we have just been so brainwashed to believe that it's just about counting. It's just about manipulation of the body. Now, does the counting and yes, it does work in one sense. But for some women, calorie counting never really worked for them. And that, that's very true. For some people, it does. And if all you want to do is manipulate the body like a bodybuilder or something like that, that's all just based on math, but we're really not supposed to look like that, like they're doing that intentionally to force the body to be manipulated into a certain form. We're talking about health here. We're talking about freedom. We're talking about feeling good and feeling happy and, being free of the strategy. And that's really what we're talking about here. So yes, on one level it works, but then I know for me, again, it was, and for Becky, it was tiring. It was exhausting. I wanted to go and hang out with my friends and have wine and cheese, like I wanted to actually live my life and be healthy. Like, was that even possible? So anyway, about this swinging. So I felt like I always needed to be on a plan. And I'm sure, Becky, you probably felt anxious. Mm-hmm. So you were jumping from plan to plan.
Mm-hmm. So
when we started to explore these concepts of like, let's remove the plan, my whole thing was like, oh no, can't remove the plan. Like, all I'm going to do is eat my face off because all my body wants is junk food. Now, if you tell a kid enough, a rebellious teenager enough, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this, then that's all they want, right? Same thing with your body and your mind. This is where in the last episode with Wildly Alive sister Jadira, we were talking about this mother-daughter relationship that happens within our mind, is that if you tell yourself enough, I can't have it, then yeah, if you tell yourself enough, you can't have the Pop-Tarts, you can't have the Pop-Tarts, you can't have the Pop-Tarts, you're gonna want the Pop-Tarts. So initially, yes, when you remove all the plans, you will kind of swing and you will have more Pop-Tarts than you have had, right? And if you really want to look into this, you can YouTube search the Minnesota Starvation Project, or yeah, it was a Minnesota Starvation Project. Fascinating about how calorie counting really does not work. It is so proven in that. And what happened is, after they were off the calorie counting or whatever, they all swung and like basically made up for everything that they didn't eat. This is the Pop-Tarts for Becky, made up for it. But as long as they didn't go back into calorie counting, what eventually happened is their body offset, meaning they got to their body's natural set point. And so yes, when you initially remove the plan, it is normal for you to go and like have an excess amount of chocolate or ice cream or Pop-Tarts. But don't go into a drama about it. Just know that this is just kind of the process. And in Set Free, we talk about this. But as long as you don't go back into restriction, because this is where the swinging happens, restriction, binging, restriction, binging, restriction, binging. Then you will eventually come back to, and you YouTube search that if you really want to look at what happened to these participants in the study, because it's pretty wild. So what Becki was experiencing was normal. It's not that she doesn't have willpower or that her body just wants junk food all the time. It's just she had told her body enough that she couldn't have it, that when she removed all the barriers, her body like kind of wanted to make up for it. The inner teenager was like, well, I'm gonna have all the Pop-Tarts I want. But then eventually you didn't want the Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, and that's not to say I never have a Pop-Tart. Sometimes I do, but it's not every day. It's not even once a month right now. So yeah, that pendulum swing has stabilized.
Right. So when you think about the Set Free class,
mm-hmm.
like, what do you think was one of the biggest things that, like, the biggest kind of takeaway for you that really helped you shift into a place of freedom and letting go of the food strategy?
Yeah, so this was one of my favorite classes looking back. So for me, besides the obvious of our the different techniques, if you will, that we talk about, the food lover concept and the food scale, not weighing scale, but like asking yourself how hungry.
The hunger scale.
Yes.
Yeah, the hunger scale. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. For me, this is part of the food lover concept, is just being intuitive with my body and stopping to listen to my body. Once I cut those diet rules and stopped looking at everyone else to tell me how I should feel and how hungry I should be, and really stopped and checked in with myself to see, okay, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? What do you want to eat? Once I really stopped to listen to my body, that was just opened so many doors for me. That was like just huge for me, because I wasn't listening to my body at all. Not when it came to food. I was not showing emotion as much. I was just totally disconnected with my body. So that was a huge concept for me, was just stopping and listening to what she had to say.
Mm-hmm. And so when you first started doing that, I mean, where were you confused? Because, or like, what was some resistance that came up when you started doing that? Because that's, I mean, again, like, of course it sounds great in theory, and people listening are like, yeah, it sounds great. Your body can lead you to what you want to eat. But my body doesn't talk to me.
Right.
She doesn't talk to me. I don't even know how to listen to her. Like, I don't even know like where to start. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah. There was definitely more resistance in that part for me than dropping all the food rules. Because I had been taught by society that I couldn't trust my body, that we had to be on all these diets. Like you mentioned earlier, that you thought anyone who was naturally healthy must have an eating disorder. You know, I just thought that that the experts must know better than I do. And so some things I put into place to trust my body again is I started meditating. I started off with guided meditation, just being still with myself. And you do some guided meditation work with us too. But just stopping, putting a timer on my phone a couple times a day, and just stopping I'm a busy mom of 3. So all I had was a minute a couple times a day, but just stopping and like placing my hand on my heart and my belly and checking in with myself. And just sort of dating myself, so to speak, just taking a minute to hear what I had to say. I sometimes would do a little bit of, journaling, but I think the meditation was pretty big for me. And I couldn't just do the flat out silent meditation at first. So it was definitely having some spa music or someone guiding me through some sort of meditation work, or even just going outside and walking outside and listening to nature. Just to really help ground myself and get back in my body so that I could listen to her.
Right. So we're going to share with you today the food lover concept, which is all about your experience with food, but also like getting more in tune to your body. But I love this whole idea of just like these little check-ins, of like setting a timer once an hour, once every 2 hours, where you just stop and put your hand on your chest and your belly and just say, how is my body feeling right now? Because we're just running from thing to thing to thing to thing. And we don't realize that, oh, I'm hungry, or I'm thirsty, or I'm tired, like it's more of just like, it's not like you need to do anything. I feel like, I think it's more of like a conversation starter, or like getting to know your body a little bit more, but for the guest expert for this month, we are actually going to talk about breathing exercises. So that's like breath work, which meditation is a form of breath work, because it's always bringing you back to your breath, which your breath is in your body, right? So coming back to your body, getting grounded, things like that. Yeah, I love that. So let's just like really play this out. So, it's like lunchtime, and you're trying to figure out what to eat, and you're trying to apply like, okay, like I can eat whatever I want. It doesn't need to be low calorie or low carb or whatever. Did you have any sort of resistance towards, like, say your body, say you had like a frozen pizza, and you're like, I really like want the frozen pizza. Like, that sounds really good. Like, do you remember how you kind of walked yourself through that process? Or like, even with the Pop-Tarts, honestly, even with the Pop-Tarts, like, do you remember kind of taking yourself through the connecting with your body, figuring out what your body is desiring, and then working through any sort of like old rules that you had to just kind of like, okay, we're not. Yeah.
Yeah. So using, say, the Pop-Tart. So I check in, I'm like, okay, do I want the Pop-Tart? Am I feeling anything else? Because usually when I want sugary things, I'm tired. I noticed. So am I tired, or I just want the Pop-Tart? What's going on? So if I do want the Pop-Tart, in the beginning, I would kind of feel like I was being naughty, like, oh my gosh, I'm having this Pop-Tart. I can't believe I'm having this Pop-Tart. And then I would have to remind myself, okay, slow down, enjoy it, taste the Pop-Tart, really chew it, look at it, so yeah, there were definitely some, there was some programming I had to do in the beginning, where now it's just normal. Like, if I want the Pop-Tart, okay, I do notice where now I go more on how I'm feeling. So there's some days where I'm like, oh, I've got some digestive distress. Okay, what's going on? What did I eat lately? And then I kind of look back and see how I ate. Like, okay, you know what? I need a little bit more fresh fruits and vegetables to help the digestive system. So let's add that in. So that's how I kind of go about it now, where I go based on, okay, how I'm feeling, how I want to feel, and what I want to eat. So I kind of combine all three.
Right. And I don't know if we actually talk about this in Set Free, or I think it's maybe My Body Rocks, where we actually talk about like these signs that your body gives you to help you have more of a balanced diet, which, your poop and your pee, they give you some insight into what's going on, your skin, like what I think it's in My Body Rocks in the fall when we actually start talking about that. But like, if you are having deer pellets, every day, then it's like, okay, and so there's this combination that can happen when you're trying to figure out what really is best for your body. And, sometimes it can be external things. Like, for me, when I have excess of dairy, then I will usually like start breaking out. And it's like, for other people, like maybe they're constantly bloated. And so it's not necessarily always this internal dialogue. It can also be external things kind of helping, guiding you as well, to help you navigate the best way of eating for your body in this phase of your life, right? Because currently I just had a baby and I'm nursing. So what I'm eating right now is not what I will be eating when I'm not nursing, or at least when Bailey starts eating solid foods and I'm not, providing her only source of food, right? My diet is going to change. And so this is what is so empowering about having a conversation with your body around food is when you are relying on plans, eventually that plan is not going to work for you. It's not. Like, you may find a plan that works for your body and it's all well and good for a little bit, but eventually the body evolves. The body changes. It's a constant evolution. And depending on your external circumstances, your personal life, all those things, you're going to need certain things, especially as women who have 28-day cycles, especially as you go into perimenopause and menopause. Like, it's all different. And so when you learn how to tune into body-led eating, you have a tool to sustain healthy eating for the rest of your life. And you no longer need to rely on anyone else for the solution. Because again, you could work with a nutritionist, you can find a plan that works for you, but eventually that plan is going to run out. Eventually it's not going to align with you anymore. Eventually you'll either start gaining weight, or you'll start breaking out, or you won't feel energy anymore because that no longer aligns with your body. But if you can start to settle in and breathe and learn how to communicate with your body when it comes to eating and food and what feels good and what doesn't and things like that, is like how you ate last year may be totally different than how you eat today, and like when I was pregnant, I was able to eat things when I was pregnant that prior to pregnancy, if I ate that, I would feel terrible. And I was like, well, okay, I can eat this. This is fine. I was eating like lots of bagels and cream cheese. Baby loves bagels. And like, if I would have ever ate that many bagels and cream cheese, I would have felt terrible. But when I was pregnant, I was like, well, I mean, I still was, aware of like when the inner rebel would be like, oh, well, you're pregnant and, you're eating for two. So you can I would still like monitor that a little bit of like, okay, Nichole, like, let's really think, have you had bagel and cream cheese like the last 3 days? Okay. It's, like, and so I would really just be honest with myself of like, am I doing it because I can get away with anything because I'm pregnant, or is it something that I'm really craving right now? And like having that honest conversation with myself. And sometimes I was just doing it from like a rebel, like I can do it because I can get away with it type of thing. But most of the time it was this conversation of like, okay, like, let's just be honest, bagel and cream cheese every single day for 3 days in a row, honestly would start to make my stomach hurt. So I was like, all right, like you can't just have a free for all here, like you still need to have some fiber in your breakfast or something like that. But, like, it's just having this tool really helps you. So like the word that's coming to me is like empowerment. How do you feel about your relationship with food now?
I never thought I would get to this point, but yeah, empowered is such a great word. I definitely feel empowered in just trusting myself. I actually trust myself and my intuition that she knows what my body needs. And I have noticed that the cycles, like in the winter, I tend not to eat as many fresh fruits and vegetables. It's more cooked. But in the summer months, did I say that backwards? In the winter, right? I want cooked.
No, you're right. Yeah. The more rooted
and then in the summer, I crave more fresh fruits and vegetables and lighter things, so you can see that like in your own nutrition right now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a good point. That's such a good point. Because if we really think about it, before we had like grocery stores, where you can buy strawberries year round, really, we were only eating strawberries when strawberries were sprouting, right? And so, yeah. And so it's like, if we really start to like, and we talk about this more in the Workout Like a Woman program, where we talk about the cyclical nature of being a woman in 28-day cycle, but also the cycle of 365 days is, and we don't really dial in too much around it with nutrition, but it's still to this understanding that we are cyclical. And in the winter months, we do crave more heavier foods. And if we're in a dieting mindset, we can go into the drama of that, of like, oh my gosh, I'm like wanting potatoes and I'm wanting more bread and, like creamy soups and things like that. Like, this isn't good. This isn't healthy. This is just going to make me gain weight. What am I thinking? Blah, blah, blah. And like, we naturally gain a little bit of weight during the winter. It's okay. We're going to be okay. Like, I promise you, we're going to be okay if we gain a little bit of weight in the winter. It's the natural wisdom of the body to pack on a little bit more insulation. And then what naturally starts to happen is spring and summer rolls around. You start to naturally crave more salads and fruits and, vegetables. And you start to crave movement a little bit more. And so it's, again, like some marketing that happens in the winter is like, you don't want to gain the holiday weight of, 10 pounds every year can equate to blah, blah, blah. I get so mad about that because it's like, okay, maybe we don't need to gain 10 pounds, but you're going to naturally create a little bit more insulation. You're going to be a little bit more squishy in the winter. You just are. You're less motivated to work out. You're less motivated to eat salads. You don't want it. And again, you're going against the natural flow of your body. If you just trust that, okay, like I'm eating more soups and breads, and again, not going overboard, honoring yourself, and then knowing that spring and summer is going to roll around and you're going to want to eat more lighter foods. It's just what's going to happen. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. So anything else that like kind of, I'm going to share the food lover concept, but is there anything else that's coming to mind for you right now?
Well, besides feeling empowered, just having the trust within myself, it makes my life so much easier too. I can eat the same dinner as my family, where before I was, depending on what diet I was on, either making myself a totally separate dinner or just eating the meat and then like making a separate salad that I could add on. So, besides all the tracking, the extra meal preparation I would have to do for myself was time consuming. And I feel like I'm just setting a better role model. I have 2 young girls and a little boy, but I'm being a better role model for them, a positive role model, and truly showing them how to trust themselves and their bodies, and that their body can tell them what to eat. And so that's really shaped what I do as a mother too, because before I would be like, no, you can only have 10 gummy bears. And, with little kids, you do kind of have to be careful, but where now I'm kind of like, well, put your hand on your heart. What's your body say? How many gummy bears do you think she wants today? So I'm passing that on too. And that is just the best gift to me, is to be able to pass that on to my little kids.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I was just thinking, I'm like, man, what kind of message is that sending your family if you're always having a different meal than what your family's having? Like, how do you justify that without putting dieting behaviors onto your children?
Right.
It would be really tricky. I mean, okay, so like if you have like a food allergy, okay, like a true food allergy, and we talk about this in the Set Free, there's a whole different conversation that we have, and we talk about how to navigate that. So you don't, like, if you are, if you're gluten sensitive or you have celiac or something like that, you can't have bread or gluten, like there is a way that can become a dieting behavior. And there's also a very empowering way to have a conversation with yourself around that, because not eating the gluten is an act of self-respect, right? So, if you aren't eating certain pieces of the meal because from a place of body respect, your body has made it clear to you that you can't eat it, that's different. But if at every meal you are making or altering it for, food strategy purposes, it would be really hard to not pass that down on your children. You'd have to get really clever and probably be out of integrity and kind of lie a little bit. And, like I think most women who come into Wildly Alive, they had mothers with disordered eating.
Mhm.
And now like you're really setting this example of like, I want to model to my children what a healthy relationship with food looks like.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So let's quickly talk about the food lover concept. So these are like the little magnets you get if you jump into Wildly Alive Mastery. Even if you just jump in for a single month-long class, you still get this. Actually, any class you'll get it. You get like this welcome packet with some good Wildly Alive goodies. So I'm going to give you the food lover concept if you have not heard it before. So I would suggest you write it down. Before we send these things out, I just encourage you to get sticky note and write it down and bring it to your dining room table. And it's not that you need to be a food lover, or like we talked about the hunger scale in the last episode. It's not like you need to do this at every single meal and every single snack. I say if you can try to embody it with one meal or one snack, what will happen just naturally is you'll start to train yourself to be more present with food and to tune into your body as you're eating. And you'll start to naturally do it. It's not like I follow this food lover concept every time I sit down to eat. It's became second nature. Do you feel that way for you, Becky?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. At first I would always forget about that card. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do that card. So then I would just kind of pick like one concept to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would really just, before I ate, sat and asked myself, okay, how hungry are you? And then I would slowly actually add each concept at a time. So it built upon one another. So now I've been doing this over a year and a half. It is like second nature. But yeah, I definitely couldn't remember all those things. I couldn't even remember to go get the card before each meal, when I was first introduced to it.
Right. So that's a really easy way to apply this is like LOVER is an acronym. And even if you just really try to apply one piece of the acronym, you're getting somewhere. Like you're making a difference. It's baby steps. It's slow, and that's okay. If you're doing this right, the right way, it feels good. It's okay if it takes some time, right? And so I have had women kind of like turn the food lover concept into a little bit of a diet where they're like, I have to follow this to a T and so perfectly. And it's like, don't do that. Just start slow. And if you miss a concept or one little piece of it, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like even if you just apply one little piece, one little idea of this can help, because it's all about just getting you present in your body when you eat. Okay. So LOVER is an acronym and it's not in sequential order. Okay. So L stands for look at your food. And this does sound silly, but we're just so unaware when we eat sometimes that we haven't even like looked at our food and like really looked at it, not like glanced at it while you're like spooning it on to your utensil. Like just look at it, because this just like starts to signal to the body that it's time to eat, right? You start to actually create digestive enzymes and, your body starts to get into preparation of eating. And then O stands for observe what you taste and say thanks. So what does it really taste like? Like, are you actually tasting your food? Break down the ingredients. Is it sweet? Is it salty? Is it sticky? Like, see if you can like really get in your mouth and really taste the food. And then being grateful, adding a little layer of gratitude, because again, like there have been a time in history when food was not so easily accessible to us. And really to get that strawberry onto your plate took a lot more work than I think we even realized, right? Has anyone ever tried to grow a tomato? Right? Like if you get like one tomato off of your tomato plant, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, right? And so just feeling grateful for Mother Earth to be able to do that, or however it made its way. Just feeling grateful that you have access to food, because a lot of people don't. And then V stands for venture inward. So how is your body responding to the food in the moment, but also afterwards? So venturing inward can also correlate to the hunger scale on the back of like how hungry or like how full are you becoming? Are you satisfied? Things like that. Because you're not necessarily going to feel the effects of that food until 20 minutes later, right? After it's been kind of digested and assimilated and broken down. Is like if 20 minutes after a meal, you're gassy and you're tired, like your body's kind of saying something there. We're not saying like you're a bad person for eating it, but from a place of like listening to your body, okay, all right, my body, after having bagel and cream cheese 3 mornings in a row, I'm having it this 4th morning and it's not feeling so hot. I'm feeling bloated. That's what happened. I start to feel really bloated. Okay, maybe I need to ease up. Okay, maybe I should ease up on that. Or like 20 minutes later, if you're feeling really good and you have some energy, that's a good sign that whatever you ate was in agreement with your body. Again, it can always change. It can always change. This is why it's so powerful. And then E stands for eliminate distractions internally. So stopping the strategy around food, which we've been talking about this entire podcast and all the other ones, is like removing the strategy. And then externally, trying not to like be on your phone or watching TV or, things like that. Which again, like there's some pushback with that, but, really looking at food as like a sacred act. It's a sacred act of nourishing your body and slowing yourself down and not trying to do 4 other things while you're eating. Like one of the biggest things that we talk about with this is like, take a lunch break, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just go to the, lunchroom, go outside. Like, please don't eat lunch in front of your desk while you're getting work done, because this is an act of respect, feeding your body. In our society, we've just been trained that food should be fast and quick and like, just, get it done and over with, create a turd, keep going, be productive, move forward, and it's like, that's so not what food is. Food is nourishment, food is energy, food is happiness, food is health, food is medicine, like it can be all those things for you. But when you're just like, doing 40 other things. Now, again, Becki is a mom of 3. So what was your challenge with this one, Becki? How did you navigate this one?
Oh, the taking the time. Well, I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, the external distractions.
Oh, the distractions. I mean, that's okay. So the distractions just force me to slow down because my dinner meal is distracted a lot. So I'm always a slow eater anyway. So yeah, the distractions, I think, just work in my favor because it is forcing me to slow down, and I'm already a slow eater anyway. So I'm just allowing myself more time to digest.
Right. Well, like if the kids are running around and like things are super crazy and you're eating, like, is there anything that you do to just kind of like calm yourself or get yourself present with your body and food, even though you got 3 wild ones?
I would say only 1 is wild, but
okay, that's good.
Yeah. That tried and true, just checking in with myself, that placing my hand on my heart, skin to skin, just does so much for me. It really has just trained me to, okay, come back in and ground myself. So that is in deep breathing, which you said you're going to talk about on the next podcast. I love the deep breathing because it can be done anywhere, anytime. Just slow my breathing, hand on my heart. That does it for me nearly every time to just calm, come back in.
Yeah. And the last pieces are rest your fork and breathe. Right. And so even if like you're in an environment that is really chaotic, because again, we don't need to like be a monk and eat in silence every day. That's not what I'm saying, but it's like trying to just, your external world can be a little bit crazy while also being peaceful inside. And so, yeah, the breath is really great of like, okay, well, if I breathe and I, touch base with myself, and maybe, like you're around the dinner table and you don't want to put your hand on your heart because people are like, what do you think? You could just, like skin to skin with your own hands together. It's like my body is touching my body. And okay, like just take a deep breath. Like maybe you realize you're just like inhaling your food and you're like, oh, okay, like let's just sit back. Let's take a breath. Let's check in with my body. And like, you don't have to be a food lover from the beginning to the end. You could notice that halfway through your meal, you've been inhaling it, you've been on your phone scrolling. And instead of being all or nothing, you could be like, okay, well, I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to get back in my body. I'm going to feel how my body is feeling with this food in it. And right there, like you have harnessed the concept right in that moment, just in a matter of seconds. And again, you may not think that this is going to change your relationship with food, but I'm just going to really encourage you to try me because it is pretty powerful. And what happens is the wisdom comes through. Your own wisdom comes through when you slow yourself down, you get out of your head and you shut off the distractions. Is you realize, oh, wait, I am full. Or, oh, wait, this actually tastes like shit. Like, I don't even really want to eat this, you know? Like, this happens all the time when I talk about the food lover concept. All the time. I didn't even like it. It like didn't even taste good. I was just eating it to eat. I was just eating it like I was just eating the popcorn because I was at the movies and I was so enthralled in the movie. And it's like, wasn't even good popcorn, or I was already full, you know? And so the wisdom comes through with just a breath. If anything, you know, like just a breath it can make just such a big difference. So I'd love for you to try that and see how it works for you and give yourself time to try it again and try it again and trust the process, because Becky is a really good testament to what can happen when you just slow down. And I feel like if, you know, she has such a history with dieting and food strategy, and you feel like you have that history, you know, like she's come a long way and you could too. So any last words of wisdom, Becky, that you want to leave the sisters with?
Yeah. So I had this comment come up from one of the sisters that I think it's a great one to address. And they asked, how did you go from being super controlling to just letting it go? And I told her, you know, it wasn't overnight. You know, it wasn't like I joined Wildly Alive and after 1 month, I was like, woohoo, I got it all figured out. You know, great things take time. And it wasn't just one technique, but the layering and all the knowledge that I learned from my year in mastery, it's just layer upon layer upon layer, all that built up. And my trust within myself built up where, you know, through that time and that practice, now I can be a food lover and now I can listen to what my body is saying, but it did not happen overnight. So give yourself some grace, start with the breathing. Everyone breathes, right? Start with the deep breathing and just connect with yourself and then build on from there.
Yes. Yes. I love it. Okay. Thank you so much, Becky. So
thank you.
All right, ladies, as usual, when in doubt, ask your body and enjoy the rest of the podcast episodes. Okay. Bye. That food lover concept is so, so powerful. I hope you took notes. Hope you're going to take it to your dining room table and really try it out. Don't be a perfectionist. And if you are listening to this close to the release date, we are doing a free experience called Effortless Eating. This is about releasing the stress and making healthy eating easy again. Just look for the link somewhere around this audio or video, and you can get access to that before it's over. If not, you can move on to the next episode where you are going to meet some Wildly Alive experts teaching you a tool on how to get into your body more powerfully than ever. Just go to sameteampodcast.com to listen to the next episode.